Our nation has watched in unspeakable horror as assault weapons have been used in massacre after massacre in communities across the country. We know that an assault weapon ban can work because it has worked before.
Tonight, the House passed a bill that would ban assault weapons for the first time since 2004. It passed largely along party lines, with just 2 Republicans voting for the measure and 5 Democrats opposing it. The ban is not expected to make it through the Senate, where it would need support from at least 10 Republicans. So let's discuss. With us tonight, Maria Teresa Kumar, the president and CEO of Voto Latino. She's also an MSNBC contributor, and MSNBC political contributor Matthew Dowd, also former George W. Bush strategist and founder of Country Over Party. Matt, you and I spoke during our hour-long special about gun violence after the Uvalde shooting. What do you think of this bill and the fact that it's most likely going nowhere in the Senate?
Well, and I think you're right. I think there's not enough senators in order to pass this bill. We know from the evidence of years gone by, when this was passed in the 90s, gun violence, mass shootings went down. When it expired in 2004, 2005, gun shootings against mass shootings started rising. So we know it works as a law that it works. I think from a political standpoint, let's just put aside that it won't pass the Senate. From a political standpoint, I think it's smart politics by the Democrats because they have risen over the last month in the polls against Republicans because of 3 things: what happened with Roe versus Wade, the January 6th Commission, and gun violence. And I think anything that highlights those 3 issues, especially gun reform, is good for the Democrats politically.
Well, here's another one. Yesterday, Senate Republicans voted against a bill that would have expanded medical coverage for millions of vets. Matt, this is your former party. What in the world is the strategy there?
Underline the former very clearly, party in this. I have no idea what the Republicans, I think they've become a party that doesn't really stand for anything anymore, any fundamental things. I mean, this seemed like a slam dunk bill that they all supposedly were for. Mitch McConnell promised weeks ago to get this deal done. They now are just drawing the line at things that make no sense, and they're spending time on things like gay marriage, on things like ensuring that women don't have a right to access to reproductive freedom. All of these weird things they spend time on, and then they vote against stuff like this, which actually supposedly for them helps out who they constantly advocate for. So in my view, there's no logic in what they're doing, because I think today it's a party led by a cult and to a personality, and it's based on performance art. And I think that's why they're left with 0 principles and 0 policy direction.
Veterans who they say they advocate for, but who clearly they vote against. Maria, I want to share what another former GOP strategist, Stuart Stevens, told me earlier this week about the current Republican Party.
It is a failure, ultimately, of policy that is at the root of what has happened to the Republican Party. The Republican Party failed to attract non-white voters. They never really came up with the policies that were necessary to prove to those who weren't white and like themselves that they could better their lives. And because of that failure, they had 2 ways to go. Either they could keep working and admit it was a failure, or they could just try to become a white extremist party and make it harder for other non-white voters to vote.
You think he's right?
Let me take you back into history a few years ago when Mitt Romney lost failingly, and the Republican Party came up with what they called the autopsy. This is how we were going to attract a more diverse base. They looked at it, read it, and stuck it in the drawer and decided, no, you know what? Let's become white nationalists. That's basically what they decided to do, because they did have that opportunity to talk about business in a way that the Democrats never were able to. They had an opportunity to actually tackle the environment because they were so close to the oil companies. They had an opportunity and they chose not to. And this is the thing, at the end of the day, we actually want a thriving Democratic and Republican Party. We want to have a country where you have a choice when it comes to the ideas to advance policy, and we don't have that right now. So what Liz Cheney is doing, and what we're starting to see with Pence do, is break that Republican cult, that fever. And if they can, whether it's that they choose to stay with their own party or break out into a third party, then the democracy has a shot. And that is what we're talking about right now, is we're at a crossroads that if we don't have more than a one-party system, but a thriving 2 to 3 party system, we're basically at a loss as a country and as a democracy.
I see where Liz Cheney is doing that. Where exactly do you see Mike Pence doing that? Earlier this week, he said he stands for all the America First principles. His focus is just different than Trump's. Where do you see a break?
So I wouldn't say that I'm aligned with either Liz Cheney or with Mike Pence. Let's be clear. But the fact that he is trying to go toe-to-toe right now with Trump, going against the candidate. I mean, the fact that he went to Arizona and said, you know what, I'm not supporting your candidate. I'm supporting the one that is less right-wing than you are. The fact that he went up to Capitol Hill last week and had a conversation with senators saying that things were not exactly on the right track. He's not denouncing Trump, but he's trying to create a new lane for the Republicans to get back on track. Is it going to happen? I think it's going to be really, really difficult. I actually wouldn't be surprised, Stephanie, if at the end of the day, the one that cleaves off of the Republican Party is Trump, kind of what Teddy Roosevelt did in 1912 with the Bull Moose Party. And then, that went off to a different way. But at least it creates this opportunity for us, again, to go back to policy. It's going to be really difficult, though, because we are feeling a lot of pain. What the Republican Party right now stands for is not just white nationalist racism, sadly, in many ways, but it's authoritarian. And when you go to the local level, you have so many communities right now that are hurting as a result of these authoritarian tendencies that's on display.
Or maybe Mike Pence is just doing the math, because the latest Fox News poll shows that Democrats John Fetterman and Josh Shapiro are leading in Pennsylvania races by double digits. Against whom? Hardcore Trump-embraced candidates. Think about that. Maria Teresa Kumar, Matthew Dowd, always good to see you. Thank you for being here tonight.